Thank you for joining us for the second part of tonight's France 24 debate. With me still on the set, we have Alexis Poulain. Thank you so much and welcome back. Famke Krumbuller, nice to have you with us as well. Also, Julie Depimodon, hello again. And finally, we've got Bruno Bernard. Thank you again for being here with us, to all of you. Now, once the parliamentary elections are out of the way next month, Emmanuel Macron's next big challenge will be Europe. Macron, of course, was the only really vocal pro-Europe candidate out of the original 11 in the campaign. According to one polling company today, the #1 issue for many of Macron's voters was actually the European Union, followed by unemployment and social security. This is an issue that is dear as well to his heart. Just after his victory on Sunday, Macron walked to the stage, and those pictures you can see there in the courtyard of the Louvre Museum in Paris, going along to the sound of the European anthem, Ode to Joy. There were also many people in the crowd there waving European flags. Here's what he had to say.
We need Europe, my friends, so we will rebuild it. And because we will have done these reforms, because we will be stronger, I will rebuild a strong and balanced alliance, thanks to you, with Germany, in order to give back Europe a real dynamic.
Pour pouvoir redonner une dynamique véritable à l'Europe.
I will be the president of this rebuilding, the president of the waking up, and of our European ambition.
That's President-elect Emmanuel Macron. Famke, how risky was it for Macron to campaign so vocally on such a pro-European platform?
You might think it's risky, but actually when you look at the polls, majority of the French are pro-European in the sense that they want to stay in the EU. They may be not in favor of further integration, but they do want to stay in the EU and in the euro, which was also often the contradiction in Marine Le Pen's program, because it wasn't that sure she was ever going to win a referendum for leaving the Eurozone. So on that front, when you look at that polls, maybe not that risky. On the other hand, he was the only candidate that campaigned on a clearly and openly pro-European platform. So that was indeed very interesting, and he still managed to pull it. So.
Julie, is that something that you saw came up a lot in your work, this real desire for the European Union and a vote for Macron because of that?
As a tech entrepreneur, I think it's really interesting to inspire the rest of Europe with values such as, using the digital to kind of become a continental force on the international scene, and really help entrepreneurs thrive across the continent. So that's a really good point, I think. And for the rest of it, it's also going to help other countries open up to the rest of Europe and be much more competitive when it comes to entrepreneurship.
Much more than wanting to just stay in Europe, Emmanuel Macron also really wants to reshape the EU. What exactly does he want to do, and how likely is it that he can do it, Alexis?
Well, I think there's a big question mark over the EU budget and how you share the burden of the debt in Europe. But that's a big question that depends on Merkel re-election and how the Germans actually will look at France. And today, Jean-Claude Juncker just said to Emmanuel Macron, you have to be careful with the French debt. I mean, words is okay, but you have to show and prove that France is a trusted partner. And that will be tricky because the 3% debt in France is something that we have to look after, and with the program and the way France is working at present, it might be difficult to have a social program, to manage everything and please the European partners. What will be easier is that with Brexit now, one of our biggest enemy or enemy brother, the UK is out. So France will have a bigger voice in Europe, and surely the German-French lead will be even stronger.
Brexit is, of course, a big issue. Let's listen now to what the British Prime Minister Theresa May had to say on hearing about Emmanuel Macron's win.
Now, yesterday, a new French president was elected. He was elected with a strong mandate, which he can take as a strong position in the negotiations. The UK, we need to ensure we've got an equally strong mandate and an equally strong negotiating position.
Theresa May there talking about wanting to have that equally strong mandate for negotiations on Brexit. What do you think What can Emmanuel Macron bring to the table when it comes to negotiating and in this conflict with Britain and Brexit? He obviously isn't going to be at the precise negotiating table, but what kind of influence? Can he change anything? Can he do anything?
No.
No.
No. I mean, French presidents have been very good at talking about Europe, but they were slightly less good about doing something. Thing is, France is too weak to have a voice against Germany, for example, or to impose itself on the European Union. So I think that Emmanuel Macron will want to have a look at what his priorities are, whether it's reforming the country, France, or it's trying to reshape or restart Europe, as he said. I think he won't be able to do both.
You mentioned this idea of Macron being seen, or France perhaps being seen as weak. And there was a very interesting tweet from Nigel Farage, the very pro-Brexiter Brit. Take a look at this. If we can bring this tweet up, we should have it. He said, "A giant deceit has been voted for today. Macron will be Juncker's puppet." Those are pretty tough words as well. Any reaction from any of you?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is Nigel Farage. I mean, he's been, campaigning for Brexit and then he left. What sort of victory is this? I mean, looking at negotiation ahead, I think Britain will be very isolated, and France. There is a fear, since the populist vote didn't work in France, that there will be a Macron effect. Like, he's young, he's dynamic, he loves the enterprise. You look right now in Europe, capital for startups and innovation is London. It might well be Paris in a few weeks, months, years, and that is what is going to be difficult for the UK, is retaining the talents for finance, for banking, for innovation. France might be the new hip country like UK was when Blair was Prime Minister.
Let's talk a bit more about international relations with Emmanuel Macron within the EU. His first international meeting, no real big surprise there, will be with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel. How do you see a Merkel-Macron relationship evolving, Anke?
I mean, she's obviously very happy now that he was elected president. She and her government are hoping that he will implement reforms that they think France needs. And what Macron is hoping that Germany, as a result, changes their vision of what Eurozone integration looks like, because that's what he wants to address afterwards. I'd say it's unlikely that they agree to a common budget or any type of fiscal transfers. And that will be difficult for Macron to handle at that point. What's important to see is that Germany and France traditionally kind of use the same words to talk about the Eurozone and what they want for it, but it's very different in how they see it. I'll give an example. France wants a budget for the Eurozone so that you can have fiscal transfers, and Germany would agree to a budget so that they can intervene in the budgets of other countries to control them. So it's a very different vision, and it will be interesting to see where France and Germany will go on these issues, because they remain extremely important in terms of how viable the Eurozone is, simply.
Indeed. Macron also wants to organize conventions, he says, across the whole of the EU. He wants to discuss actions, priorities, a method that worked for his movement, En Marche, during the campaign. Do you think that's something that the rest of the European Union will go for?
I would probably argue it's not their priority right now. They have so much crisis going on. The European Commission is spending a lot of money, and more than before, on communication, but that's probably communication in crisis mode. They have the ongoing Eurozone crisis with Greece and Italy. They have the migration crisis. We're talking still a lot about populism. We need to negotiate Brexit over the next few years. So it's definitely a good idea from the European perspective in terms of reviving the European ensemble, maybe. But I would argue, do they have the time and the capacity to deal with these
I think
things?
they do. I mean, you've seen in Romania, in Poland, there have been manifestations pro-EU. I mean, Europe is a chance to fight against corrupt government, to have more freedom of the press, freedom in your country. So I think it's a good opportunity to actually go to the vice-lord country, for example, and have a bigger campaign pro-Europe, for Europe, saying Europe is not just about debts, controlling immigration, fighting or whatever. It is a chance for all of us. Surely there will be also a reshaping of the alliance at the European Council, and who's working with who, since the Brits are no more here to support some of the anti-European countries. So that will be very interesting to see what's happening. And And also Juncker said that he will step down in 2 years' time. So there's an opportunity that if Macron is good and work fast, he will be able to maybe put a French for the job.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, just I think that Germany will soon miss Britain because they loved this love triangle they had with Britain and France, and Britain and France were cancelling each other out. I don't think that Germany wants a head-to-head with France all the time, so it will seek for new allies, as you said, might reshape.
Yeah, it will reshape, sure.
When Macron was elected on Monday morning, the EU in general did seem very thrilled. We were talking to our correspondent in Brussels who said there was a lot of elation, people drinking champagne. They were so happy that it was Macron that won and not Marine Le Pen. Obviously, not everyone, not every European Union country is so happy about Macron. Which for you might be the biggest problem, the country that's the most against Macron and what he represents?
Maybe you can find them in the east, maybe Poland, but even the Netherlands or Denmark, who usually align themselves on the UK's position, might not go for more federalism if that's what Macron is pushing, and that's what he actually said. I really wonder where Greece will stand on that. We saw that Varoufakis supported Macron against Marine Le Pen. You always have to bear in mind that these people supported Macron because he was facing Marine Le Pen, not because they just fell in love with him. Yeah, you have to watch this space and see who the new countries are against this new federalist push, I think.
I mean, in terms of integration on the Eurozone front, the southern European countries will be definitely in favor of what Macron is doing, and they're hoping for that. Italy especially, but also Greece, Spain and Portugal will very much be in favor of that type of Eurozone integration. It will revive probably the divisions that we've seen in the Eurozone during the crisis before, where you have the North against the South. So Germany, Finland and the Netherlands against France and the South, because they have entirely different visions on what they would like the Eurozone to look like in the future.
Maybe if you stop thinking about the political representatives and just look at the people, I think what the new government is promoting as values is more citizen engagement, being able to listen to what the people want, to be more effective as a government, and to be more transparent as a whole. And I think this is quite positive for other European countries to kind of grasp and to get inspired. When you look at the latest movements, such as Podemos, Les Indignés, le Mouvement du 12 Mars, all those European movements are super eager to have these kind of political leaders to kind of inspire them.
Just getting back to the legislatives, the parliamentary election for a moment, how much will what happens next month in these parliamentary elections affect France's relationship with the European Union?
Well, it will decide. I mean, the new government that will emanate from these parliamentary elections will decide, the future of France's policy towards the European Union. So I think for Emmanuel Macron, the best choice would be to have a Republican majority, because that's maybe the most pro-European political force left in France, aside from En Marche, but I don't know how much En Marche weighs, actually.
Alexis?
Are not existing at the moment. Yeah. That's a big gamble.
You say the centrists are not existing?
Well, there's a small party, but if he managed to, out of that, with the Bayrou team, make En Marche a real big centrist party, but we never seen that apart from in the 70s with Valéry Giscard d'Estaing. So that's a tricky choice. But clearly the most anti-European will be on the side of the extremes, left and right, fighting for more sovereignty for France and less Europe.
I'll just quickly add that in terms of policy, obviously he's very dependent on his next government and therefore on his prime minister and the majorities in the next parliament. But in terms of international policy, and that includes the EU, President of France actually has quite some leeway in terms of what he wants to do. So if he runs into trouble in terms of governing and the majorities that he will have or not have, maybe, he still will probably be relatively free to decide by himself, let's say, on his EU policy. So that could be an interesting situation.
Just one last point I want to touch on. We're talking a lot about what's next for Emmanuel Macron. We talked about the upcoming parliamentary elections. We talked about Europe. There's one thing that I find interesting. I'm American, from an American standpoint. And we've seen this sort of Obamaization, if you like, of Macron a little bit, at least what he's been trying to do in his campaign. And apparently he would also like to formalize the job, if we can call it that, or the position of First Lady, which is a big position in the United States, something where the First Lady actually has a platform, something she's dedicated to try and do basically volunteer to make things better for the people. Now, Macron has said that that's something he would like to do, indeed, for his wife, Brigitte. First of all, just to explain, if any of you know, to our international viewers, why is there not this First Lady tradition in France? And is it true that that hasn't existed? Does anyone know?
I think it's date back from the royalist ways. You know, you have your favorites, you have a harem, French harem, so no First Lady, I think.
Do you think that this would be a good thing to have this, to establish this kind of position? Would his wife Brigitte be a good person to actually put in this sort of position? Or are we getting into dangerous territory again, especially given all that we saw with François Fillon and the scandal surrounding him with these fake jobs? Could there be some sort of fear of getting into that territory? What do you think about that?
I guess if it's officialized and she actually does work, then we don't have a fake job. So on that front, that would be positive. It depends on how the French look at it. They always are quite interested in following the stories around their president. So, you know, it might just be something that's popular just in order to have something interesting to follow for the population. Depends how she interprets it. It will obviously be an interesting role if she's the first person to really take it up. She'll set the precedent of what it will mean to be France's First Lady.
Would that be a good thing for France, do you think?
Don't know. I mean, you know, spending more public money on non-elected office is always tricky when it comes to...
Unless it's for a good cause.
Well, you have to define what a good cause is, if it's about getting your wife a status, I'm not sure it is a good cause, but, can always be seen like that.
But if it was something that was dear to his heart, education...
True. I mean, she can, do some good, of course, as, former non-first ladies have done, president's wife so far have done. The thing is that with an official status, she'll be playing a political role that will definitely reflect on the president and on France. And that's the trickier move, I think, in that idea.
Indeed. All right, just to wrap up before we go, the legislatives are just about a month away. Again, I know no one has a crystal ball, but if you could say the way you see this is going, what would you say? Bruno, you think cohabitation? You think
I've already said, that we're probably going to get a majority.
Famke.
I'll add my way by saying it's extremally difficult to predict because we have 577.
That's a lot of, and all up for grabs.
It's important because a lot of people are venturing into, there are polls out there, even though we don't even know yet who the candidates will be. So that's all a bit curious. So I'll just say extremely difficult to predict, and it will remain difficult to predict.
Too close to call.
What's important, I guess, is does he have a momentum in terms of can he convince people that he needs a majority to govern, and do people go with that? Or do they just go back to their local candidate that they know much more because he's been simply around for much longer? So it's different than the national situation.
Julie?
I find the situation fascinating because France is really going towards a big experiment. So I would want for En Marche to have a majority just to see how far we can go in being progressive in the way we voted. So it's not a guess, it's probably a hope.
And Alexei?
I'd say you have to expect the unexpected. It will be, I think there's a movement with the French people saying there are too many old politicians we don't want to see anymore. So if we keep on this movement, if people keep marching, there should be a majority for En Marche and a lot of new faces.
All right, well, we will see what happens in about 4 weeks' time. So watch this space, as we say. Thank you so much again to all of my guests today. Alexis Poulain, thank you very much. Julie de Pimodon, thank you. Famke Krummuller and Bruno Bernard, thank you so much to all of you. It's now time for the France 24 Media Watch. All right, Emma. James, you have been looking at retractions to some of the latest political twists that have been here in France, particularly with former Prime Minister, Socialist Prime Minister Emmanuel Valls, we were just talking about it, jumping ship, saying the Socialist Party is dead.
Yes, absolutely. This is what everybody is talking about online, if we're talking about France and politics in particular right now. Lots of people having quite amusing reactions to it. This is one tweet in particular that I liked, where you have Emmanuel Valls portrayed as a small child with his little teddy bear, and you'll notice that Emmanuel Macron, En Marche, is embossed on that briefcase, and the words that go with it say, I beg of you, Emmanuel, and he says, I told you no, Manuel. Anything. I can stick the stamps if you want. So they're really painting him as being desperate for any kind of job within the government of Emmanuel Macron. This tweet too, very similar. Manuel Valls claiming his entrance into the government of the République En Marche, the new name for En Marche, Republic on the Move. And of course that image coming from the movie Shrek, the cat begging there. Another one in a similar vein, Le Gorafi, which is a spoof website.
Like The Onion.
Absolutely. It does catch out quite a lot of people, it has to be said. They do some very convincing things. However, I don't think too many people are going to be fooled by the idea that Manuel Valls has actually been spotted trying to climb the front of the building of the headquarters of En Marche. I don't think too many people will be caught out by that one. And this tweet I particularly liked, saying that Manuel Valls is ready to change his sex in order to respect the gender parity that Emmanuel Macron wants to have in his government. But on the more serious side of it, as you said, he has declared the Socialist Party dead, and that has come as something of a shock to quite a lot of people. The New York Times among those reporting, because of course the world's eyes really are on France now. I don't think any election in this country has ever been so closely watched on the global stage before. Of course, unsurprisingly, the socialists have reacted in a manner not too impressed by this defection. Olivier Faure, a socialist deputy MP, says it's too simple when you leave an organisation to say that it is dead, to wipe your feet on it. So he's not impressed at all.
What about Emmanuel Macron's team? What's been coming from them?
Well, it would be an exaggeration to say the reception's been lukewarm. It really seems to have been quite frosty, to be honest. Not sure if it's a question of they were caught by surprise. I doubt it, because Manuel Valls had expressed his support for Emmanuel Macron long before now. But as the local reports, it isn't clear if he is actually wanted. He is, of course, inextricably linked to François Hollande, having been his Prime Minister for over 3 years. And his own popularity really tumbled during that time too, it's worth noting. As for Emmanuel Macron's spokespeople, they have been commenting on this on various different radio stations today. Benjamin Griveaux said on Europe 1 that he hasn't actually lodged his candidacy as far as he knows, and that Manuel Valls isn't immune to having to do that. He has to do the same thing that everyone else has done, and the application window closes in less than 24 hours' time. Another reaction here, this one from Sylvain Chasseny, saying that this hurts. Valls has been asked to submit an online application if he wants to receive an endorsement. And she's linked to a tweet from Christophe Castanet, another socialist who is switching to En Marche, and he says, I have lots of respect for Manuel Valls, but his candidature isn't automatic. He's going to have to make an application the same as me. And he actually had some slightly stronger words too when he spoke on France Info earlier today. What he had to say, if I can just find it because it's disappeared, there we go. The Republic of Privileges is finished. Again, a move away from what we've seen in the past.
Now, Emma, as you were saying, of course, Emmanuel Valls does have experience, a former Prime Minister for the Socialists, but could he be a poison chalice for Emmanuel Macron?
He has plenty of experience, but he has baggage too, without question. He endorsed, of course, Emmanuel Macron ahead of the first round of the presidential elections, and that saw a lot of images like this being created by French cartoonists. That, of course, a nod to his Spanish heritage, stabbing Benoit Hamon, the socialist candidate, in the back. And this one too, showing that even then he was seen as not necessarily what En Marche wanted to be associated with, that political establishment, the Socialist Party that's so unpopular, the Socialist government. And here he is shouting, "I'm voting Macron," and Emmanuel Macron is driving the En Marche bus away as quickly as he possibly can. For the Front National, the National Front too, the words of Marine Le Pen's sort of speech when she conceded defeat will be ringing in Emmanuel Macron's ears without question. This was a tweet from that night where she said that the French have chosen their new president of the Republic. They have voted for continuity, and that was not meant as a compliment, that we can be sure of that. Florian Philippot, also from the Front National, has said that with Manuel Valls and of course the possibility of Ségolène Royal joining the Macron government, the feeling of renewal will quickly dissipate, he says. And the final word on this, a less serious one. This is an imagined conversation between the two and uses a phrase that Emmanuel Macron introduced to many of us last week.
In the debate.
Yes, poudre de perlimpinpin, which is basically fairy dust, false promises, if you like. And Emmanuel Macron saying, "Do you want to be the minister of fairy dust? Would that suit you?" And he says, "Just don't you care about me?" Well, we're going to have to wait and see whether he does care about Manuel Valls and whether he wants to be associated with him going forward.
Indeed. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. Thank you so much, Emma James, for that Media Watch. Thanks to all of you, of course, for watching France 24. Do stay tuned. More news is coming up shortly. Don't go away.